Asalaamu calaykum waraxmatullahi wabarakaatu. Daawadayaal waa walaalkiin Ayaala Ismaaciil oo maanta ka soo hadlaya runta news. Walaalayaal ku soo dhawaada maanta waxaan la jooga qof qaali ah. Magaceeda waxaa la dhahaa Melissa Chowdhury. Waa ayo Melissa Chowdhury? Melissa Chowdhury waa gabadh u ordaysa District 9. Dadkuna waxay isweydiinayaan District 9 yaa degan. Waxaa degan Mercer Island, dadka degan Bellevue, South Seattle, Tukwila, Seatac, Kent, magaalooyinka District 9ka ka mid ah. Yay u baxaysaa, yay qofkii doonaysa inay kasoo dejiso kursiga waayo. Waxa weeyaan nin la dhaho Adam Smith. Adam Smith waan nii sheegi doonaa waxyaaluhu aaminsan yahay iyo dhibaatooyinkii dhaawacyada ka soo gaaray policygiisa. Adam Smith wuxuu fadhiyay 28 sano as a Congress. Waan ka wada hadli doonaa, bay la soo dhaweeya walaasheen Melissa Chowdhury. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Again, now we have some tough questions for Melissa, and I know definitely she has the answers. So let's get to the questioning. Melissa, foreign policy, it's a big conversation in the community, in a cafe, at religious centers, at schools. You can see what's happening with the students, the protests, the ongoing conflict in Gaza, and the broader Israeli-Palestinian issue is a major humanitarian crisis. What would be your approach to promoting a just and lasting peace, providing humanitarian aid, and using diplomacy to resolve this long-standing conflict?
Well, thank you so much for that question, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's a great pleasure to speak with you. The immigrant communities in CD9 and across Washington State and indeed across the nation are the most vibrant and vital component of America and most important to our future. When it comes to foreign policy, my experiences are informed by the fact that my husband is a decorated disabled U.S. Army veteran, also an immigrant himself. My father was in the Navy for 20 years as well. And I myself have traveled and worked abroad on 3 continents in many different countries, including Ghana, Central America, Indonesia, Pakistan. So that has given me a perspective of valuing the whole world and valuing different cultures in a way that prioritizes equality and sees that the fundamental human values of liberty and justice for all, which are also our fundamental Muslim values and our fundamental American values, need to be applied across the board in foreign policy. Right now, America prioritizes military intervention and deeply underfunds humanitarian efforts. America could single-handedly provide the funding for the response to the complex humanitarian crisis in the Horn of Africa, in Haiti, and of course in Israel and Palestine. Israel could have peace tomorrow if they accepted equality for the Palestinians. They have been implementing an apartheid system with different colors of ID cards and different rules of law in different places Palestinians can and cannot go, and continually dispossessing those people for the last 75 years. There's no surprise that there's resistance to that. America's role should not be to continue arming the state that is in the position of being the oppressor. Even if they're the oppressor out of fear, even if they're genuinely concerned for their own safety, that's not something that we can continue to be supporting because it isn't in keeping with our fundamental principles, with our own laws, and with international law more broadly. We need to be stopping sending weapons to Israel, and we need to be supporting a resolution to the conflict that is based in liberty and justice for all.
Melissa, this question is the one that everyone wants to know in the community. Why should voters in our community support your candidacy over your opponent, Adam Smith? What makes you uniquely qualified to represent us in Congress?
I very much appreciate that question and the opportunity for trust that goes with it. The job of representation in Congress has a name. It is representative. Right now, Adam Smith is in Congress. He has been there 28 years. He is a Caucasian man who was born and raised in the district. He completed his law degree and went straight into a career in politics, starting at the state level and then up to national. There are 2 things I'd like to say about this. One is that he doesn't have the direct lived experience of international experience, personal challenges, personal connections to communities of color and immigrant communities that I do. And he's never spent time on the front lines of human services issues here the way I have. I have worked in affordable housing, I have worked in addiction treatment, I have worked in the nonprofit sector in a number of ways, including immigrant support, hygiene access, and more. I've also gone through personal challenges. I understand what it's like to be housing insecure, to be hygiene insecure, to go through family separations and the challenges that go through that come along with that. And so I can represent these experiences and these lived challenges from a position of empathy that he simply doesn't have the experience to supply. I'm also running a very different campaign. Adam Smith is almost entirely funded by AIPAC and the Israel industry, and by special interests and dark money, including the war profiteers, those who are making money off of supplying bombs and bullets to other countries. If you look at opensecrets.org, that's where the vast majority of his campaign financing comes from. The mathematics of that do not lead to his being accountable to the people that he serves. That's very different for me. All of my contributions are from individuals, whether large or small contributions, and I'm grateful for all of them. I am not taking dark money, I am not taking PAC money, and therefore I am not obligated to those interests. I can genuinely represent the interests of the communities who I have lived with, who I have served, who I have encountered in all types of capacities all around the world, and represent those interests from the heart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa, you talked about funding and candidates getting funds, and knowing what you said earlier, that you're a grassroots, that your money is coming from the people, and we know that it is more authentic. And knowing that candidates who have been sitting in Congress for 28 years, they get a little bit of different kind of funding, and also when it comes to vote, they show up last minute knocking on doors saying, what can we do? And also provide money to the community so that they can get votes. What is your take on money in politics? The influence of money in politics is a major concern for us. We see that all over the news. How would you fight to get dark money out of the election and reduce the power of special interests like AIPAC and those who want to see their candidate in place so that they can get that special interest kickbacks?
I really appreciate the question. There's multiple levels to this. So one is election transparency and funding transparency at the national level. And making sure that we implement laws that actually require the disclosure of where money's coming from. We just saw a race in Oregon just recently where a huge amount of dark money spending came in right as the ballots were dropping, and spent over $1 million on ads that were completely unrelated to the interests of that party who was putting them into it, the money into it. And they didn't have to report on whose money that was or where it was coming from until well after the election. And even when they did have to report, they just said, oh no, there was no money, and lied on their reporting and then paid the fine for not disclosing because the fine was cheap for them in order to preserve their secrecy. Wow. How is this possible? Right? We are supposed to be a democracy. This is supposed to be a land of, by, and for the people in our governance. And so I take this very personally. I think this is a deep corruption of what democracy means fundamentally. So fighting for election integrity and transparency and getting big money out of politics is something that I absolutely do in Congress. But then there's the question of how it affects people on the ground in the district. It is absolutely true that when money comes down from the federal government and invests in the community center, invests in local buildings, people feel good about that. That's something that is their government working for them and them getting some sense of pride and value out of their participation. So alhamdulillah for that. With that said, there's two pieces to this. One is that the more systematic economic conditions, the investment in small businesses, the investment in vocational training, the investment in high quality labor standards and in robust infrastructure and housing and healthcare, all of those things can make the community more prosperous from the ground up at the grassroots level and across the board. That would mean that people have more freedom of conscience to decide who they want to vote for based on principle and not necessarily based on financial interest. And that's something that I want. People should have that personal sovereignty, that integrity of conscience. And so for that and many other reasons, investing in the infrastructure of hope and opportunity is very important to me at a grassroots level. So the second piece is that we need to look at the mathematics of what's really going on economically in this community. Right now, the war budget alone takes over $2 billion a year from CD9, from Congressional District 9, these few cities here. $2 billion a year. And right now, our incumbent brings back maybe 20 million. That's 100 to 1. That's 1%. We are giving $99 for every one that we get back. And the mathematics of that are not to our benefit, in any way. And again, the special interests that are funding that campaign, a lot of that money is going to provide their profits, right? They are making money directly from this community, and we're being satisfied with crumbs, quite frankly. So there have been a number of instances of progressive, younger Democratic challengers who have come up and taken seats of power at Congress and then been able to bring back 2, 5, 10 times more money back to their district than their incumbents who were more or less comfortable. So there is that goal for me. Like, I want to bring more money back to the district. I want to make sure that this is an economically beneficial arrangement for my constituents. That's part of my duty as a representative. And so looking at what the economics are really and saying, okay, we can reduce our spending on defense, which really means war and projecting military power overseas and profits for the military-industrial complex, and we can be saving that money and investing in our communities in a grassroots manner, building human services, building infrastructure, and bringing more money back to the district than we currently are. So that's my position on that. Thank you.
Thank you. As you heard, everyone, that follow the money. It's very important that as a community, especially District 9, that we understand where the money is going and how much is coming back to us. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to share, like, and subscribe to Runta News channel on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.